Some Philadelphia Eagles, and then obviously the Washington Redskins slash Commanders, depending on if
Commanders.
people have replaced their clothes or not in the last several years, their jerseys. Still see a
Probably
lot of
not.
people walking around with Redskins gear on.
Yeah.
And then a lot of people switched it out. But yeah,
Yeah.
I would say that's probably the most common around here.
Well, the
So
Steelers have like the most well-traveled fan base.
you think?
Yes. Well, I married one, and that's what he'll tell you. So,
He'll tell you that. Got it. It's like CrossFit people. They're going to make sure you know.
yes.
Let's see. Somebody had said there was audio feedback, so just looking to see if anyone, because they were saying, is anyone else getting it? I
Yeah,
haven't seen anyone.
I haven't either.
Um, yes, it's going to be recorded. It's not being sent out after the meeting, FYI. Oh, I see some people are posting primarily to hosts and panelists. If you guys go into the chat when you post your comment, if you have the option of changing the little blue box to everyone, it'll go out to everyone on the meeting instead of just to us. It looks, I made it a setting, so hopefully that works. A couple people saying it sounds good, sounds good. Okay, that's
Mhm.
good. I just wanted to make sure before we jumped right in. So that's awesome. Thank you, Jenna and Julie and Angelica and everybody who helped us out. We have Jen in New Jersey who said it's hot and humid there. So I guess still feeling like summer. And then I was answering John. John asked, are we going to be recording this and will it be sent out after? This is being recorded. All of our event recordings, just to get the logistics out of the way, are going to live in the Best Practices Association in our BPA. So we have a folder in there that houses hundreds of recordings of our master classes and our podcasts and our webinars. So absolutely, you can get the recording when this is all said and done by jumping in the BPA. And actually, we're going to share how to do that here in just a moment. So actually, it's 2:02. We can probably just pull it on up and get started.
Perfect.
All right. Well, I have Courtney here with me today. Courtney is one of our fabulous lead practice coaches, and she's on our business development team. So I'm excited to have you here to talk data with
Me
us.
too. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, no problem. Well, first we had to talk weather, we had to talk football, we had to talk back to school, all the important things that are
I was
happening
just going to
this time
say
of
that.
year. But we're going to be talking about data and how to turn data into decisions in your practice. And before we jump into the content, since we were just talking about where the recording is going to live, we'll just share a little bit in case you haven't heard before. We have an association, an online community, the Best Practices Association, and it's a space where you can log in, you can participate in events, you can see the event recordings. If you escalate into some higher tiers within that association, you can have access to a lot of the resources that we talk about in these events, as well as role in practice and chat forums, study clubs, lots of things living in the BPA. So you have the option of doing it on your own by being a part of that BPA community. You can also join the group, which is our To the Top Study Club, and you can participate in our live and virtual study club sessions where we take a lot of this information even further and everyone gets to engage and chat around how to apply these best practices as a group. And then if you want to climb all the way to the top with us, you can join our one-on-one pro coaching program. We are both lead practice coaches who also wear dual hats in our organization. And so there's a lot of us that are out there helping private practice dentists and their teams to build great practices, take what they have that's working well and just take it to the next level so that you can ultimately enjoy living your life through creating a practice that supports this life that you're looking to build. And so you can do that right in the BPA. Here's a QR code. If you're not a member now, you could scan that on your phone. It'll log you right in. You can join via your phone. There is an app, the Best Practices Association app. Or if you are a desktop person, you can also join on your computer by going to join.actdental.com and you will be able to explore everything we have to offer right there in the BPA, including the recording of today's webinar, and share it with your team and your friends and anyone else that you think would benefit from it.
Do it. It's
All
awesome.
right, let's jump in. It is Thursday, August 14th. August is almost over. It's hard to believe. But we're going to go ahead and jump in today and talk about how to turn data into decisions, why data is important, and what it does in your practice to help you understand how to apply countermeasures and make decisions. So, we think this is important because there's a lot of dental practices. We've experienced many of them as coaches and as team members over the years that run on feelings, assumptions, reactions to things that are going on in the practice instead of stopping and looking at the data. If someone's frustrated, we might jump to a reaction instead of waiting to say, like, wait, is this just like a single complaint or is this actually a problem? We might jump right in and change a process without really digging into the data first. The schedule feels a little light. We panic. We start getting into our anxiety and making these fear based reactions instead of stopping, analyzing the data, and really using that to help drive our decisions on what we do next. So, feelings are fleeting, they're fluid, they come and they go. They are subjective. We'll talk a little bit about the difference between feelings and data, but data is dependable. And so, the reason that we think this content today is going to be really helpful is that there's so much fear and anxiety that can happen, especially as a dental practice owner. There's so much that weight on our shoulders as the dental practice owner to make sure that things are going well, that we can allow that fear and those anxieties to take over sometimes. And if we can stop and look at the data and rely on it as a really dependable source of truth of what's happening in our practice, it helps to alleviate a little bit of that and give us a better course of action and a starting point to know where do we need to go to really make an impactful difference. And it helps us keep our cool too, which is great for our team. So I thought it would be really fun to just run through a couple of ways this can show up sometimes in a practice. We could probably come up with a lot of our own stories too, but for the sake of not hurting anyone's feelings, we're just going to use some fake scenarios here. So the schedule feels light. Everyone has experienced this at some point or another, that panic that comes from it's Tuesday morning, you have a minute, so you start glancing through the schedule and you start seeing that there's 3 openings in hygiene, there's one in the doctor's column. Oh my gosh, we can't have holes. Holes means we're losing money. You start freaking out. You go right to your administrative team and we start, you got to fill the holes. We got to fill the holes. We don't think about maybe our scheduling agreements that we have in place and trusting that our team is doing what they're supposed to be doing with managing that schedule. We just start panicking. We're shortening appointments, we're dragging things out, we're double booking things, we're moving patients around in a state of frenzy and reaction to this anxiety or this feeling. And at the end of the month, we look back, our capacity actually looked really good. We met all of our production goals and we created all of this chaos, all of these rushed visits. We frustrated our team, all because we were reacting to this feeling, this like quick response of anxiety that we had rather than stopping, looking at the data, but going backwards, looking forward to see what's scheduled coming up and saying, like, hey, we're going to be okay. We don't need to freak out about this. We have some systems. The data's telling us everything's going all right. Have you experienced this, Courtney, in practice?
Absolutely. And it's hard not to, right? You see a hole in the schedule and we're kind of pre-programmed, like fill it. Hole means there's opportunity to be not busy or opportunity to, sneak in and do something that maybe we don't need to do. However, you're 100% right. If we know what the numbers tell us, if we know where we are in terms of production and we know where we are in the month, then there's no need for the panic. Data is going to tell us where we should be so that we don't need to lean into the emotional part.
Yes, it happens all the time. And you're exactly right. Don't be ashamed if this is you. This happens to everybody at some
Oh,
point
yeah.
or another, for sure. Here's the flip side of it, though. Oh my gosh, we're so busy. We must be fine. I don't need to worry about marketing. I don't need to worry about creating a hygiene recare system. Can't tell you the number of times I've worked with teams who just don't even regularly call on their unscheduled hygiene patients because we're so full already, right? The schedule's slammed, the phones are ringing, hygiene is booked 6 months out. Our practice is thriving, or at least it feels that way because we're just so busy. But because you're not tracking KPIs or you're not looking at the data that tells us how well our practice is actually doing, we may miss the fact that even though we're busy, our production per visit is down. our treatment acceptance is slipping. Maybe we're doing a lot of little stuff for emergencies, so we feel really busy. We don't have these holes in the schedule, but are we actually as productive as we need to be? And then these overdue recall patients are just stacking up. These really awesome, loyal patients who have been with us for years didn't get their next appointment, or we had to cancel it because the power was out that day and the internet stopped working and we never got him back in. And we're not even calling that hygiene recare system because we just feel busy. We don't even have anywhere to put them anyway. By the time everything slows down and that starts showing up, you may not even recognize that your collections are suffering, or we've lost months of opportunity around treatment, or that hygiene maintenance and having people in the ideal program of care health starts slipping for our patients. So if we don't respond to just the way it feels and we stop and look at the data, we'd be able to know that, hey, even though we're busy, we may not be busy with the right things. And we need to really use this information that we have in front of us to make smarter decisions.
Absolutely. And then this kind of leads back into that panic, right? By the time the slowdown shows up, now we're like, "Oh, we need to get everybody in and shorten the appointments and and then your team yet again is going to be upset because this is not the way that we need to function efficiently.
Yes. And it's interesting because a lot of times our team members don't love talking about data. Some do, but most don't. And reality is, if we talk about the data together as a team on a regular basis, it actually helps to calm those fears, calm those reactionary responses that team members also don't like being on the other end of from our office managers and dental practice owners. And it also helps for us to be able to just know the truth. This is why I love this little side by side. Like, it tells us the truth. We don't have to assume anymore. It can celebrate what I'm doing well. It can point out the things that we maybe don't have a system for yet that we should. So feelings fluctuate almost daily, sometimes hourly within a practice. It's like a roller coaster all day long. But data tells us the truth every single time. And those reactions are reactions to symptoms in the practice. Trends are actually going to show us real insights to let us know if our systems are working, or maybe there are systems we don't have yet that we need that could help to make this stable consistently over time. Feelings create uncertainty, they are mixed messages. And data gives us certainty and clarity. It's like cleaning your glasses and being able to see what's actually going on instead of just trying to squint through it and figure it out based on, again, just how we're subjectively reacting. So, feelings being more subjective. And if you have 5 members of your team, all 5 of you might have a different perception of how things are going in the practice based on your feelings. But if all 5 of you are looking at data, there is no discrepancy in what's actually happened. It's objective. The whole team can align around the facts of the matter when we're looking at this data because there is no perception to it. It's just the truth of what is.
Absolutely.
Go for it. Were you going to say something else?
I was only that, yes, the data is objective and we can align around the facts. Not to say that you might not feel a certain way around the facts. You absolutely can. However, we want to use the knowledge of what is true and what is proven to make decisions, not just the way we feel about something.
Yes, that's such a valid point because we could be really super happy and excited about
Mhm.
the objective data that we're reading,
Or the other way, we
or
could
we
be
could be
upset
very
about it.
concerned.
Yeah.
But the
So
good
feel
news
your
is,
feelings, but don't let them lead your decisions.
yes, yes. And the good news is, when you have that data, you can actually have that be the starting point. And if you're concerned, great. Let's talk about what we can do to watch it trend in a different direction so we can celebrate that. So I thought we could start with just highlighting some of the key data metrics that most practices do measure that can tell us around, some of the bigger pieces of the systems that happen in our practice and the health of our practice. And so this first slide is really just some of the main KPIs that I would say most practices probably monitor on a regular basis. When we first start working with coaching clients, practices that I've worked in as an administrator, a hygiene team member, we're pretty much always looking at most of these. So, active patient count, getting an idea of what's the number of patients that have actively been in our practice for an appointment within the last 18 months. We know that healthy practices generally have between 12 and 1,500 active patients per full time dentist. And so if we can have that count and know, hey, we're right in that benchmark of where we need to be, we're probably doing just fine with being able to maintain and manage. It's also important to watch for if that number is going up or if that number is going down. If we can see that our active patient count is going down week over week or month over month, then we can look at that and say, oh, we're going to be outside of this benchmark in no time. And I did notice the schedule starting to feel a little bit lighter. Okay, should we apply a countermeasure here? The other piece that kind of ties into active patient count is our annual patient value. If you ask Barrett, who is our CEO, he'll tell you that this is probably the most important KPI in all of the KPIs that we have. We can look at the annual patient value for a practice and pretty quickly tell what their schedule probably feels like and what type of practice model they operate under. Annual patient value is basically just looking at your active patient count, looking at your last 12 months of collections, and doing a little simple division problem and saying, okay, approximately how much does each patient generate for our practice per year? And if our APV is over six, seven, 800, we're doing really well. Fee for service practices are often over 1,000, sometimes even over 11 or 1,200 per patient. And some of our practices that are in a higher PPO model, in that high volume, low profit model, are probably going to be somewhere between 250 to 450, definitely under 500, more than likely. But that annual patient value helps you to know how much are we bringing in basically per patient. It's going to help you to know, do we need more patients or can we get away with having a little bit less because each one brings a little more revenue to the practice. And then we have production, gross and net. I always dumb this down when I work with teams because I remember being a young hygienist and having no clue what the difference was between gross production and net production. So I'm always telling everyone, if you don't know, don't feel bad about it. I didn't know either. And I always just tell teams, gross production is generally a gross over exaggeration of what you actually are making. And net production is what you can go out there and scoop up in a net and collect on. So our gross production is before we adjust anything off, any of our insurance write-offs, any of our elective write-offs or membership plan adjustments. And our net is what we could actually collect on, the production that is collectible. Which takes us into the next one, which is collections, which we can actually monitor by way of dollar amount or percentage. We always say we love for our teams to aim for 100% collections. We think you should be collecting 100% of whatever it is that you can be collecting, but certainly somewhere in that upper 98, 99, 100%. Anything beyond that, you're really going to be having to work hard to capture the rest of it. And we'll talk about that with AR here in just a minute.
Mhm.
And then these last couple are predictive. So when we're looking at pre-appointment percentage, we want to know of our active patients, what percent of those active patients are pre-appointed for something in the future. We want to make sure that the majority of our patients have a future visit and they are tethered to the practice. And then we can break our production down as well into slightly more granular KPIs, production per day and production per visit. And so we're going to be able to see every day if on average we're going to hit our production goals. And then per visit, are we doing everything we can in our service mix to be able to be maximizing not only the care we're providing to our patients, but also the value that we're able to pull from each visit. If we start to really trim this down, we can get more granular. So I'm going to jump into new patient and then I'd love for you to take the next one. New patient metrics, you can see the little image here is from Dental Intel. Most of our clients work with Dental Intel. We do work with a couple of other analytic platforms as well. There's Jarvis, there's Addit, there's Practice by Numbers, there's lots of them out there. The majority of our clients use Dental Intelligence. So this is just a little screenshot from their dashboard. And when we look at new patient metrics, most people look at new patient count. How many new patients did we get in any given period of time? So in this example, this is a month's period of time. So this practice had 22 patients in that month. That's the number right there in the middle. But more importantly is to get even a little more granular besides just the count to be able to know, are we growing or shrinking as a practice? And so we also want to look at new patient growth. And so in this example, you can see that there's 22 new patients, 10 recaptured patients, meaning patients that had previously been inactive, haven't been in 18 months or more that we brought back. and 56 that were lost, either by manually transitioning them to inactive, deceased, or archived in our software, or they just simply haven't been in the last 18 months or more, and now they're considered inactive. So if we take those 22 new and the 10 recaptured, subtract the 56 that we lost, we actually had a negative growth this month of 24 patients. So while a lot of us just report on that new patient count and we get really excited, we had 22 new patients, but ultimately we shrank this month by 24 patients. And so it's really good to look at the granular details around these new patient numbers.
That's one of my favorite ones to look at, Miranda, is that net patient growth. I think clients and teams, they really, this is eye opening because you're right, they do get excited. And some of our practices see upwards of 30, 40, even 50 new patients in a month, depending on what their size is. And that is great. We should celebrate it. And also, is our back door open? Are we losing more than we're gaining? Are we breaking even? Where are we in the overall count of our active patients? So this still tells so much of the story. I love tracking that patient growth.
I'm with you. And I think when we talk about how to turn data into decisions, I think there's so many systems and like decisions that come out of
Yes.
this particular conversation right here because we put so much effort and energy and money honestly into gaining new patients, which we need. Every practice to stay healthy really does need to be because we all have attrition. But if we are only focusing on the front end in our new patient systems and our marketing systems, and we're not leaning into our hygiene recare follow up systems, our unscheduled treatment follow up systems, maybe I love a patient's going inactive or like a reactivation follow up system where somebody is actually pulling that list each month of the people that are about to hit inactivity and doing some type of follow up. We can apply so many systems within just this panel of metrics
Yep.
to make sure that not only we're bringing people in, but we're also plugging that leaky bucket where people are falling out the backside of the practice. And once they're gone, they're likely not coming back to us. You know, that day that they recall, like, oh, it's been forever since I've been to the dentist. And they chat about it with their friend at carpool line. They're, oh, I love my dentist. You should come over and come to my office. And at this point, it's been 3 years. I might as well just start somewhere new. So it's so much better to have a system for making sure those patients stay with
Yes.
us.
Yep.
Yeah. So another piece of that is that new patient hygiene reappointment percentage. So this is just another system or expectation that you can express with your team is we expect our hygienists and our team to be reappointing as many, ideally I think 90 to 94. I don't know what benchmark you use with your teams, but usually I work with around 90 to like 94, 95% hygiene reappointment. It's unlikely that you're going to reappoint 100% of your hygiene patients. There's always people moving or people who, aren't coming back to the practice, or perhaps they're people that are see patients that you don't want to reschedule for their next visit, but certainly in that upper 90 percentile so that we can know that they're tethered for their next visit. They're going to remain in our active patient pool. And the last one is around new patient referral source tracking. So, this isn't a metric that we pull necessarily directly from a dashboard like Dental Intel, but we certainly can find this information in Dental Intel. You can also just find it by running your new patient report in your practice management software and taking a look at, of these, say, 22 new patients that we had this month, how many of them did we actually document where they found us from? So every practice management software that I know of has the option of building out a referral list in the software where when someone schedules a new appointment, you just pick how they heard about you. It might be location, it might be another patient, it might be a specialist in your area that referred them, or Google. But indicating where this person was referred from will help us with future marketing, as well as if we're trying to really lean into like our avatar or ideal patient differentiation strategies. When we know where our patients are coming from, it makes that much of a difference. On Dental Intel, it's super easy. You can just actually, this screenshot that I have here, if you just click that number 22, it's going to actually open a whole new list. And you can see in a far right column if they're scheduled or not for their next visit. You can see if they have a referral source marked or not. And I think it's great to just have somebody on the team that's responsible for pulling up that list at the end of every month and going back and filling in any of those details that we missed.
I love that. All of that's so important to track, to keep track of, and to talk
Yes.
about with your team.
Yeah.
for sure.
You want to dig into this one for us around scheduling?
Sure, absolutely. So a handful of scheduling metrics, and as Miranda said, this is just to start. There's so many more that we can track, but these are really important. So your overall capacity. So think of this, we call it butts in the chair. If you have X number of hours available in your day in hygiene or in doctor side to see X number of patients, how many of those hours were utilized and how many weren't? And track that to drive how accurate your perhaps scheduling system is or your follow-up systems are. And again, it's just a data point that tells us how well we're doing so that we might feel busy, but really were we? What is the actual capacity numbers tell us? And ideally, Miranda, would you agree you'd want to shoot for around 90% or higher capacity?
Yeah, absolutely. I usually say 90% or higher. 94 is great. Usually, though, if you have 8 hours in a day, if you think hygiene, once one patient is in, like you're pretty much going to be at or below 90% if you have, kind of one 6 hour, 6 unit hole. The other decision around this one that I think is great is, and this has probably happened to you too. It's like, I think we need another hygienist. We're
Yes.
scheduling, 8, 9 months out. My hygienists are getting freaked out. They feel so busy. Well, before we make that decision, let's look at the data. How much are we fully actually utilizing the hygiene team that we already have? If we have three hygienists and they're all at 70% or somewhere in that range, we don't really need another hygienist right now. We need to do a better job of getting the butts in the chairs and keeping them there, as you were
Yes.
saying. Right. And so that's again how we just take this piece of data and transition it into a decision.
Yeah. And you just break it down a little further. I love Miranda earlier you said one dashboard, one little piece of knowledge can just open so much opportunity for systems, for how many things we do collectively that influence how successful our capacity is or how successful our cancellation or our no-show rate is.
Mhm.
And you should be tracking that. If you start your day with a certain number of patients, how many did you end your day with? Are we losing patients? Are we confirming them? How are we confirming them? How frequently? What method of contact are we using? Are we using multiple, which are successful? So you need to know what that no-show rate is or your rate of cancellations, again, to determine how successful your overall scheduling system really is. And then recaptured really leans into your recare system. It leans into of those patients that it's been 18 months and a day or more, are we grabbing them and pulling them back? Are we getting them back into our web? And if we are, how did we do that? Track it, talk about it so that you know what's successful and perhaps what needs a little tweaking.
Yeah, I love that. The other thing I like to look at with cancellation with clients is like you were mentioning short notice. Was our day full at the beginning of the day
Mhm.
or did we not fill it to begin with? Whenever people say I feel like our schedule's a little light or we glance through and we look at capacity is below 90% and we say, "Well, is it like it was never full or people started falling out of the schedule?" And then you have to break it down from there. Is it within the last 24, 48 hours it fell apart? Or was it longer than that? And we don't do a good job of filling that and recovering that time, even when we have more time to do it. And then get even more granular. If it's day of, now we can actually even track data, get feelings out of the way. I just feel like everybody's sick right now. I just feel like it's summer. So people are forgetting. Well, let's actually like tally what are the reasons people are canceling.
Mhm.
And then we can start to make decisions instead of just assumptions around what we need to do to make a difference. So, yeah, I love that. I think that was perfect. All right, case acceptance. I love this one too. This might be my next favorite thing to look at with practices aside from new patient data. I just think there's so much story within case acceptance in this one little dashboard. We're looking at things like diagnostic percentage, meaning how of the exams that a doctor did during a given period of time, what percentage of those exams resulted in a treatment plan, some form of elective treatment plan. And we really want to be at 40% or greater in terms of our diagnostic percentage to know that we're keeping our future schedule full. And when we're looking at the diagnostic percentage, the very next piece of that is it's great if we're doing a really good job with diagnosing enough. The next piece is are people saying yes and are they scheduling? And there's two different ways that you can look at this. The first and the easiest, more general KPI is our patient acceptance percentage and understanding of the number of patients that were presented treatment, what percent of those patients said yes to something? So, for example, if a patient was diagnosed with four crowns and they're approximately $2,000 a piece, that's an $8,000 treatment plan. If we only had that one exam today, then we'd be at, we would have the diagnostic percentage of 100% because we had one exam and we diagnosed on that exam and treatment plan something new. If the patient said yes to even one of those crowns, we're at 100% patient acceptance because they said yes to something and they scheduled moving forward.
Mhm.
The next layer of that is the treatment dollar amount acceptance. This is where it gets even a little more granular. If they only said yes to one of the four crowns, they said yes to 2,000 of the $8,000 treatment plan. That's going to be a 25% acceptance percentage based on the dollar amount. And then we can even break it down further to say, okay, I don't know that I'm going to hit my production goals next month, but the schedule looks pretty full. I diagnosed enough. The patients said yes, but I'm still not quite there. Well, what's our average dollar amount that we're presenting? If on average we're presenting like a filling per patient, we're probably not going to be able to hit our goals as easily as if we're doing more comprehensive dentistry and that dollar amount that we're presenting is a little bit higher. So, in this one little block of our dashboard, we can really see this particular doctor is treatment planning about $743 per exam. 51% of the patients in this given time period were diagnosed or treatment planned with something. They had 89% of those patients say yes to something, and 64% of the dollar amount accepted. So, those are pretty good stats to look at and know that our future schedule is going to be productive. And if it weren't that way, we'd be able to use the data to pick apart the piece of the process that isn't being successful. Like maybe we are diagnosing enough and enough people are saying yes, but we're realizing that, oh, they're not saying yes to everything though, or we're not getting everything scheduled. And so then we can start to look at that case presentation system and make some decisions on which part we need to focus our efforts.
Love it. And then your treatment follow-up system.
Oh,
If you
yes.
are if you are unable to capture those in the moment.
Yeah,
See,
that's a whole
one
nother.
just leads into another.
I was gonna say, well, that's why you need a coach because that's where our brain immediately goes is like, well, here are the three systems that you need to put into place that's gonna help you make that better. But yeah, if they're not saying yes to enough, now we do have to have a system in place that someone on our practice owns, in our
Mhm.
practice owns, who's gonna be reaching out and saying, like, okay, let's get the rest of this scheduled. What can we do to help you understand the value here? All right,
Absolutely.
you want to dig into AR because we talked about collections. We want 100%, but what happens if we're not at 100%?
Well, now we have to chase it. Now we have to follow it. And no practice is perfect. Every practice is going to have some dollar amount sitting in accounts receivable, whether it be from a patient balance or perhaps an outstanding insurance claim. But we need to track what lies within those buckets and track it separately. Track your claims and then track your patient receivables. So in that 0 to 30 bucket, that first bucket, whatever the dollar amount is, so you can see here on the dashboard, the bottom left says accounts receivable, just over $105,000. Of that total dollar amount, we want the majority of it to be sitting in the 0 to 30-day bucket. Why? Because it just happened. It just left our chair. Perhaps it's a claim that's still pending. It just happened. So 65% or more of the sum of outstanding dollars should sit in that bucket. And then the curve should really gradually go down from there. So 31 to 60 should be about 25, 61 to 90 should be 10. And then you really want less than 5% of your outstanding money sitting in the 90 plus day bucket. Every day that it takes the practice to collect that money, you're going to collect a smaller percentage of it. I can hear Ariel chiming in right now because it's true. And it's a lot of time and effort that goes into collecting outstanding balances. When you look at, I love also where it says patients past due 96. That gives you a visual of
Mhm.
exactly how many people are we dealing with. And it's always going to be fluid. Every day it's going to change. It's not one of those that we can look at just a month's time frame because it's going to be evolving. Patients pay their balances every day. Patients come in and they leave without paying, and then that balance essentially grows. Miranda, what am I missing on that?
Well, I was just going to say, no, you covered it great. I was going to say a couple things. Number one, you mentioned Ariel. Ariel's a coach on our team who is an admin extraordinaire. And she actually just did a couple of Metric Monday podcasts on exactly this. So you guys can always go
Love
listen to
it.
those too if you want her perspective. Ariel's, we always say, a little mix of sweet and spicy. When she was in the admin team, there people weren't walking out the door without paying their amount due. But it does happen now and then. And I think the important thing to remember is the reason we're looking at this data is to be able to make decisions when we go back to what the title of this whole webinar is. And so, if we can see that we're having this bell curve going in the wrong direction, we just need to look at our systems. We need to make some decisions around how are we presenting treatment? How are we allowing people to pay? What are the financial agreements or arrangements, if we have them or not, that we're sharing with patients in terms of expectations of how they pay?
Mhm.
And the other thing that happens for me a lot, and you can speak to this too if you've experienced it, is that when we start tracking this with teams, a lot of the administrative team members will say, well, I feel like we have a lot of the doctors, friends in that over 90. Or I think a lot of that is probably our aligner cases, like our clear aligner cases, because they pay over time and we wait for insurance to reimburse each quarter or each month.
I heard that I
Great.
feel like again.
I feel like exactly. Here's what's really cool is you can just click on if you're using dental intelligence, you could click on any of the bars that you see on the graph and it'll pull up every patient that's in that segment and you can actually do a little research to know for sure, is it actually a lot of the doctors barter the haircut that they barter in the car wash that they barter or aligner cases, or are there real actual claims out there or patients out there that we should be reaching out to? You can do it just as easily with your practice management. Maybe not just as easily because it is the click of a button in dental intel, but you can do it in your practice management software too by running those reports by date and being able to actually go through and look instead of just assuming or feeling like it's this or it's that. Let's know for sure so that we can make decisions around what we need to do next.
Yes. And I love that when you look in the, 90-day buckets, if you have plant patients that maybe are ortho or an Invisalign, they are going to fall in that because they're likely paying monthly. So if you can look at the number and sort it out and make it make sense, what is actually collectible and what's already on a plan to be collected, now you have a very well educated choice where you can collect what you need to be, and just makes it so much easier. So I always tell my teams this, it's going to tell you something first, but we need to dig into it. You have to click it open. If it's dental intel, if it's any analytic platform, click it open. If it's not, if it's through your software, dig deeper because there's more of the story that we can go after with accounts receivable.
Well, and Courtney, so a lot of what we do with these is we're talking to dental practice owners, we're talking a lot to office administrators when we do these types of webinars. But okay, if you're a team member, because I've been on this side of it too, you're a team member and the doctor has a meeting with their CPA. It's June. They're catching up halfway through the year. They're seeing where things are at. And they're like, oh my gosh, we have all these liabilities. Our AR is out of control. And they start panicking. You can say, it's okay. I look at this every single month. Let's sit down. Let's look at the data. Here's our over 90. This many is clear aligners. This many is your barter and trade. Do you want me to write those off? Are you okay with it sitting on the balance? I'm working on these 10. They pay me this much every month. So if you use the data, it might not be your feelings that you're helping mitigate. Sometimes it's the doctor's feelings or the office manager's feelings when they
Mhm.
start to see a trend and when they know that you're owning that system. If I'm the insurance coordinator and I look at this every month and I look at this data and I run these reports, we can work together as a team to make sure we go, okay, no need to panic. We know exactly what's happening within these numbers.
Yes. Knowledge is power. Know what you're talking about and be able to teach it to someone else. Love it.
Knowledge is power. I love it. Well, let's take a look at the next one. You and I both sat in the hygiene chair in private practice, so we are familiar with these data points. But a few of the hygiene metrics, like you said, there's So many things we could be talking about on a webinar about data, but we're just picking some highlights. Some of the highlights in hygiene metrics are things around perio and understanding if our periodontal protocols are working and if we are meeting those expectations around what the general population experiences by way of disease, and does that represent itself in our practice. So, some of those metrics that we're going to be looking at, some of those data points are things like perio presented or perio diagnostic percentage. This really parallels the conversation we had a few minutes ago around case acceptance, kind of on the restorative side. But of the number or percent of patients that we saw in our hygiene chair that were not previously diagnosed with periodontal disease, what percentage of those were presented with a periodontal treatment plan, whether that be 4355, gross debridement, or 4346, the gingivitis therapy code, perhaps scaling and root planing codes like 4341 or 4342. Maybe we did some individual implantitis treatment. Of those patients that we saw for hygiene services that were not previously diagnosed with perio, and if you're using dental intel, they're also 30 years old and over when they're taken into consideration. What percentage was presented or diagnosed with treatment? From there, we can stop and say, of those that were diagnosed, what was the acceptance percentage? So if we treatment planned 4 people and all 4 of them moved forward with something from that treatment plan, then we're going to be at 100% acceptance. The next piece is perio visit percentage. And this is when we look at a grander scale, all of the visits that we had from a hygiene perspective in any given period of time. What was periodontally related versus preventative? So we're basically looking at periodontal maintenance as well as active therapy codes, and we're calculating them against prophies. And we're determining what was the percentage of the patients that we saw or those visits that were, in fact, either treating or maintaining periodontal disease. And a benchmark is going to be somewhere between 35 and probably 45%. We know the general population stats. If you're over 65, it's over 60, 65% of the population that have some form of gingival or periodontal disease. If you're under 65, say 30 and over, then we're somewhere in that 40, around, some people say around half of the population. So we do know that those people are in our practices. And so realistically, around 35% to say 45% of our patients are probably going to be in this perio visit percentage. You can break that down even further to say that approximately 60% of our patients are going to be preventative or in that prophy realm. Approximately 30% are going to be in our maintenance realm, and approximately 10% are going to be in active therapy. So you can actually get really granular with that visit percentage. I actually have a team that I used to work with who is at 75 to 78% perio visit percentage. And I'm like, oh my goodness gracious,
That's
you guys are
amazing.
doing a lot of scaling root planing. But when we really looked at it, they have a slightly older population and the majority of their patients are 4910s, periodontal maintenance.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not like they're in there, because I was like, wait, are we overdiagnosing scaling root planing? No, no, no. The actual percentage of active therapy isn't nearly as high in their practice as their 4910 or maintenance.
The maintenance.
But for most practices, it's like 60% preventative, 30% maintenance, 10% active therapy when you're living in that 35% benchmark. And then the other key elements for hygiene are hygiene reappointment percentage. So, like we talked about earlier, are we pre-appointing to hygiene? Are we making sure that before the patient leaves, their next visit is reserved? And then also fluoride. Are we doing everything we can from a preventative measure? Do we have a caries risk assessment system in our practice? If we have a practice that has 3 or 4 or maybe even 8% perio percentage in their hygiene department, I'm going to guess there's probably not a caries risk assessment that's done on a regular basis. As soon as we see 3, 5, 8%, hey, this isn't a big deal. No shame in the game. We just need to talk about what can we do? What decisions can we make that will impact that data point? And perhaps it's as simple as we all get really aligned on how are we looking for risks in our patients? And then what are the things that we want to recommend or do by way of prescriptions or products or adjunct services to help support that? And then you slowly get to watch that data change as our patients get more and more healthy. Any other thoughts on hygiene metrics, Courtney?
Well said. I love looking at I really love what you shared about perio visit 60/30/10. That's a really amazing, and it makes sense, the perspective to put that into, that that's truly where your population across the board should fall. And I would absolutely love and hope that anyone listening, go see what yours is. Does it fall in that 60/30/10? And if not, what systems do you need to look at, or what conversations do you need to have to rectify that or to change that? I love it. I love hygiene.
I know, right? Well, you've done hygiene with me before. We'll have to get you on another
Mhm.
one when we're talking hygiene again. We can go off on that. I'm like, Kirk, I could talk for 2 hours about that. I miss being in the hygiene chair sometimes.
I really do. I do.
Well, the last part we'll talk about is how do I involve my team with data? So this comes up a lot with our teams. The doctor might care about the data, but they're like, I don't feel like my team gets it or wants to know. And a lot of times it's just a matter of like they don't necessarily even know what we're tracking or why we're tracking it or how it impacts the practice themselves or patients. So we have this really cool tool. It's called the KPI analysis activity, or KPIs. We're analyzing.
I was gonna let you
Analyzing
roll with it.
trends. Oh my goodness, is it Friday? No? Okay.
Almost.
So a couple of steps in this activity. Number 1, I love Ted Lasso,
You and
so
Ted Lasso.
I know I have my little Funko Pop right back here. So number 1 is you want to review your 90-day scorecard, or wherever if you're not a pro coaching client and you don't have a 90-day scorecard like we share with our teams, you're going to have some type of spreadsheet, you're tracking data, and review it together as a team. Do this at your team meetings. You could break it into huddles, although I'd stop weekly, monthly team meetings, hopefully weekly. And then ask yourselves which metrics are on track and are trending well, and take a moment to celebrate. Bonus points, doctor, if you can do the Ted Lasso celebration dance. I don't know. You can give it a go. There's a good example here for you. But yeah, before we dig into what's not working, we do want to stop and celebrate what is working well and really highlight, not only to make sure that we're building energy around the KPI and celebrating our team members, but also because we do need to make sure that whatever systems or things we're doing that are impacting the success of that metric, that we're able to continue doing those things and that it doesn't go by the wayside just because we're like, oh, cool, we set that and forget it. We're kicking butt over there. No, we still have to focus and maintain on those systems to make sure it stays going well. This is an example of a little chunk. I just pulled a snippet of what a scorecard might look like in a practice that we're working with as coaches. This particular team is more than likely working on marketing or new patient generation, because most of the primary KPIs they're tracking are around some of those things we talked about earlier: new patient count, recaptured patients, lost patients, what's our actual growth, new patient calls converted to actually being scheduled. How many of those do we get in within 10 days? That's a big thing that they're working on right now, is trying to not have new patients wait too long to get into the schedule. And so you can use a spreadsheet, or if you work with us in our coaching program, you can use this particular scorecard. And we modify these KPIs in terms of what our primary focus is on right now to make sure that we're tracking and monitoring for trends over time. We use red, green, and yellow to let us know if we're hitting goals or if we're getting close or if we're on track or off track. And really quickly, visually, we can celebrate the things that are green and we can start to watch those things that are yellow. Like, how could we maybe do some impact there? And certainly, if there's things that are red for long periods of time, we're going to want to stop and say, like, what's going on? So if I'm looking at this team, I'm going to see that percent of new patients scheduled within 10 days. We're not hitting our mark. And so, what types of decisions need to be made in the practice? What types of systems or things do we need to revisit as a team to try to improve that? So, what if the data is off track? We need to dig a little deeper. So, in this activity, we have the resource. It's in our BPA, it's in our resources. If you're a BPA premium or team member, you'll have access to this. This example shows this scorecard and the focus on new patient growth. So if this team is trying to, at least their goal is 0. They just don't want to be losing or shrinking. They don't necessarily want to grow. They just don't want to shrink anymore. And so right now, unfortunately, it looks like they're trending in a negative direction with that growth number each month. So step 3 is to just ask yourself which metrics are off track, what isn't trending well, and identify those top 1 to 3 KPIs that you want to analyze as a team and understand better. Break into small groups. Doctors, your team always does better in small groups. If you have team meetings and your team's not talking, just break into small groups. They're going to talk to each other. 3, 4 people in a group, they're going to start to talk a lot more than they will in front of the whole team. So break into small groups around 4 people max, spend about 15 minutes. And if you're a team of 5 or less, you can work together. But again, as we start to get a little bigger, we want to break up. And you're going to ask yourself some key questions. Step 5 are these questions around what is this KPI measuring? And in this particular example, if we're looking at growth, we're literally the team is talking about what is it measuring. They're learning from each other. Maybe they don't know and they have to go look it up in dental intel. And we know because we talked earlier, this is measuring like the actual growth and what that new patient count and recaptured minus lost is actually meaning to our practice. What are we noticing about this trend week over week? When we look at that whole scorecard, where there's some weeks where it looked really good and others where it went really south, did we start off good in the quarter and then it went south? Did we start off bad and it started getting better? Like, what are we noticing about trends? What are some systems in the office that we currently have that could impact this? And you want to also ask yourself, what are some systems that we don't have that maybe could impact this that we should think about generating? And I love this question for our team members because a lot of team members can feel like data feels cold or corporate. And so when we stop and really allow them to talk about, in what ways will patients be positively impacted if this metric improves, they're able to then tie the story of this data point to the people that matter so much to them in the practice. And it gives a lot more value or purpose to this just number, this arbitrary number that to your team might not mean as much as it means to you. So I just love the question of them stopping for a minute and thinking, like, how will this data point getting better actually improve patients over time? And so from this particular example, you'll see if you look through the whole thing that they go, okay, well, new patient intake system probably needs to be revisited. Our internal marketing system might need to be revisited. Hygiene recare follow up. Gosh, if we have that many patients that we're losing each month, we need to make sure that we're doing all of our efforts that we can around our hygiene and unscheduled treatment to keep the existing patients we have. And then they realized, you know what? We don't even have an unscheduled new patient follow up system. Maybe we need one of those to make sure that all the new patients that come in do have a next visit or a system for tracking that new patient call conversion. So your team can actually make decisions with you around data and be a part of the process. And we always say, without weigh in, there's no buy in. And when you report on your KPIs, it's really important to understand what do we do with this data? It's one thing to just say on track or off track, but if we're not taking the data and turning it into a decision, ultimately we're just wasting our time and everyone else's too. So I love this activity because it allows for us to work through that process of thinking through how does this data become a system or a decision in our practice, good, bad, or indifferent.
Yeah.
So I have a couple final takeaways, but I want you to chime in on the KPI analysis activity.
I love that activity, and I've run that with a few teams, and it's always really exciting to see the teams themselves in those small groups. Yes, I agree. It absolutely has to be a small group if you want maximum engagement. But it's exciting to see the team members really start to think critically about the data that they are looking at. It's not that we're looking at the person who is responsible for it or the group of people who are responsible for it. They can step back and look at the system that's responsible for it and where do we need to tweak or where do we need to realign, and how can we collectively impact this so that our numbers go from red to green or red to yellow and then to green. And also, side note, I have a handful of teams who don't do yellow at all because they are either on track or off track, and they
You're like,
they don't
that's
want it.
it.
Almost doesn't count.
It is really funny working with different teams. Some love the yellow because it just like feels better to know we're almost there.
Mhm.
And others are like, no, it is like it is or it isn't. Like,
That
so
tells you more about
if
your
you look at
teams.
any of my clients, the scorecards may or may not have yellow involved.
Same, same.
I think you made a good point though, where I mentioned the comment that we hear a lot of times is when we talk about all these numbers, it just feels so cold. It feels so corporate. It's just, we're just about the money.
Mhm.
And it's like, not at all. And actually part of the having these numbers and being able to work as a team, like you said, it's about a system. It's usually not about a person at all. If AR is off track, it's not like that person who manages AR is a problem or they're not good at their job. No, we probably just don't have expectations that have been documented or agreed upon as a team around how do we manage these things.
Mhm.
If we have four people that work in the front office and we have no documented financial agreement, somebody might let a patient just pay after insurance pays and we'll send you a balance. Somebody else might say, oh no, nobody walks out the door without paying their patient portion. If we haven't, as the leader of the practice, and worked with our team to develop what do we agree is the appropriate way for people to pay for their treatment, and then we all now know what that is, now we can all meet those expectations on a regular basis. So it's actually the opposite, I think, and it takes a little time sometimes for team to realize that when we're tracking this data, it actually frees up some of that personal impact that we tend to take from feedback. And instead we're able to look at it objectively and say like, hey, I'm doing the best I can with the knowledge I have. Maybe there's something missing.
Mhm.
Maybe there's a system that we need to put in place here, or maybe there's a different way that we all need to be thinking about this, and then just come together to figure it out, and ultimately lean away from feelings and personalizing things as much as possible and
Mhm.
lean into using that truth, using that objective data to help guide where we're going, because feelings are real. Just like you said earlier, you're going to have feelings about the data,
Mhm. And you can.
and you can, and you should, and it's going to be really hard not to,
Yep.
but they're not reliable decision makers, right? In the end, our feelings can't be what's guiding our response. We can still process those feelings, but the data itself needs to be guiding our response and our decision.
Yes.
And it's going to reveal where we should focus our time and energy. We also might feel like, oh my gosh, we've had such a crazy week. We had all these holes in the schedule. But when we look at that scorecard and where we're trending, like our schedule actually looks pretty good. Our capacity looks good. Our production looks good. And actually, what we're seeing is that our AR is off. That's where
Mhm.
we should be focusing our efforts. But we are stuck over here focusing on the schedule because it feels a certain way. And instead of really leaning into that data to say, like, this is where you need to focus your energy right now to make an impact. So I encourage you guys, like Courtney said earlier, just take some action, decide as a team. If you're not tracking KPIs right now, just kind of think through some of the ones that we talked about today and start tracking at least some. Maybe if you don't do any, just maybe start with that first slide that was the most general KPIs that practices might track. Just start recording and reporting on them. Start asking yourselves some questions, break in, brainstorm. If you can get into the BPA, if you're in our BPA premium and that resource is an option to you, like download that activity and bring it to a team meeting and just pick one. Just pick one KPI each meeting for you guys to talk about what is this? What does it measure? Why does it matter? What systems might impact it? How could our patients benefit if we see this number get better? And
Mhm.
start to get more and more aligned as a team on data and how it can help you make decisions in the practice. What else from you, Courtney? What's your inspiring final thoughts to everyone that was here with us today before we take some questions?
Oh, inspiring final thoughts. Now you put pressure on.
You're naturally inspiring.
I
Don't sell yourself
thank
short.
you. You have to have these conversations. And Miranda, I love that you said if you're not doing it right now, pick one. Pick one data point. Absolutely one of the first ones that we started talking about, one of the more, broader um, KPIs, one of the more broader points to measure and to understand, and then start diving into it and keep asking why. How can we affect it? Who will it benefit? How will it benefit them? Whether it's collections or something diagnostic or something in hygiene, pick one and introduce it to your team. Explain to them why you want them to start tracking it and why you're going to start talking about it, and let them have a little bit of that conversation. Because you're right, if they don't get to weigh in, then there will be no buy in. So it's going to work out much better for the whole team if it's a group effort.
And if you do start talking about this, break into small groups.
Yes, small groups.
If you want your team to talk, just break them into small groups.
Yep. Yep. That's the key.
That's the key. We do have one more slide here for you. And Courtney, if you don't mind popping into the chat, let us know in the Q&A if there are any unresolved questions. I did put the CE in the chat. So there is a start code and an end code. You'll need that. If you watch the recording in the BPA, you will still have the option of doing the CE. The link will be included within the post there in the BPA. But if you're a dentist and you're curious to learn more about things like data or what it's like to be a part of our To the Top Study Club or coaching, or you're just curious and you want to come visit us in Milwaukee, every quarter we do our To the Top Study Club live and in person. We have 2 sessions. The next sessions are coming up in October on the 17th and 24th. And every fourth quarter of the year, we talk about strategic planning. So we're going to be digging into scheduling strategy, marketing strategy, and how do we set our successful outcomes and goals for what we want to accomplish in 2026, which is just right around the corner, believe it or
That's
not.
crazy.
And we start doing that in the fall to make sure that we're ready when January 1st rolls around. So you can join us for free if you want to reach out to Courtney at Act Dental, or you can reach out to Gina at Act Dental, or you can scan this QR code and you can come climb to the top with us, hang out in Milwaukee, and just see what we're all about.
Love it.
Courtney, did we have any questions that didn't get answered during?
There is one specific question around if there's a way to filter AR patients that are past due according to specific billing codes in your software.
Well, that is a great question that
Hmm.
I imagine is practice management software dependent.
Dependent. Yeah.
And so I would probably say yes, there probably is. Is it possible in every software? I'm not sure. We talk about this a lot as coaches. I'm super familiar with a couple of platforms that I've worked with, and then we have other coaches who are familiar with others. I would say the best option if I was coaching you would be to reach out to your particular practice management software support team and let them know what you're trying to accomplish to see if there is a way to do that. Because my thought is there probably is, but I don't want to say yes, and then you might have a software that doesn't allow for that by particular codes.
Mhm. And then one more about will we get a recording? I'll let you tell them
So
where it's going to be.
I know, right? Maybe they were not in the very beginning. So a recording will not go out for this. However, the recordings do live in our BPA, our Best Practices Association community. So actually, I might even be able to pull up and show you what that looks like. Let's see if I can get out of my slideshow and do that. In the BPA, which I usually have at the top of my page as an open tab all day long, every day. Once you're in here, we do have a section right at the top that has all of our upcoming events and our event recordings. So after today, it will be living right here alongside the rest of these recordings. And we have them filtered by way of clinical master classes, our better thinking videos, which are great for morning huddle motivation, by the way. And all of our webinars live right under that webinars tab. So you can go back and watch anything that we've recorded in the past, as well as this recording. You do need a BPA basic membership to be able to see that, which is free. So you can log in at any time to the app by searching Best Practices Association, or you can go to join.actdental.com and log in on your desktop. I
Well
think that
said.
all right. Well, if we
That's
answered
it.
all the questions,
We
we
sure
must have
did.
solved all the world's problems in just 1 hour. So
Man, that was good. That feels good.
thanks for being here with me, Courtney.
Thanks for having me, Miranda.
Yeah, it was awesome. Thanks. Comedians are free to join. Oh, Canadians. I thought she said comedians. Yes, Canadians are welcome too. And comedians.
Comedians. We take it, we accept everyone.
I told you, I feel like it's Friday. I'm a little giddy over here. Thanks, guys. We really appreciate you guys being here. Have a great rest of your day.
Bye, everybody. Thank you.
Bye.